Hey everybody, it's wonderful to see who's going to show up today on From Boxes to Butterflies. What's going to be a great conversation this week. I've been looking forward to this week's guest for quite a while, and it's great that I finally get to talk with him today. Hey McLeana, Janice, yes, we are definitely off, and this is going to be fun. I want to do a couple of things before we start. First, I think a lot of people already know, but I'm going to show it anyway. It's like the book is now out in paperback, and I absolutely love this cover. I love what was created by Amber Williams for this. She took my thoughts and made them even better than I was expecting. So it's now out, and one of the aspects of this book is when I talk about moving beyond boxes, I talk about how we've been stuck in boxes. People have told us who we are, what we're supposed to do, what's expected of us. This story is actually kind of like a template of how to get out of the box. The main character is a prince who all his life he's told who he is, what he is. He's not allowed to be his authentic self. And the search for the armor of God, while it's a search with 12 companions, Henry happens to be the eldest prince, but not the heir apparent. And so the search also becomes his own personal quest to be aware of, move beyond the box that he's been in all his life to be his authentic self. And that's the movement that I talk about so much. Move beyond boxes and shine. This week, I've posted about my vision, which is to create a world where women break free from the confines that society's placed on us to reclaim control over our own lives. And the mission is to take the stage and guide women on the journey to move beyond boxes and shine like the stars we are. It's a path that I've walked, and now I want to show others that same path, that same awareness, to take back control of our lives. And I'm excited because tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time, I get to be on TV with my bestie sister, CJ, Dr. Leland, and this is what we're going to talk about. And now, as we get ready, I'm going to give an introduction to this week's guest. From a young age, Al Lyman took a cue from Walt Whitman when he said, "Be curious, not judgmental." He has always wondered why some people live healthy life until death and others suffer from chronic, debilitating illnesses. As a result, at the tender age of 25, he made a conscious decision to die healthy, a concept he called squaring the curve of lifespan versus health span. Sadly, his dad's declining health and eventual brain cancer diagnosis that claimed his life at a young age of 65 illuminated this concept, inspiring Al to turn up the volume on his own journey to optimal health. This included watching an Ironman, the Hawaii Ironman on TV, and deciding that he was going to do it. Today, Al is known as the Age Optimizer, who helps you live stronger in your second half. He specializes in age-related health coaching for mature adults, determined to beat the doctor dance and take back their lives. He's the author of Age Well and Feel Great, the proven path to solving the aging puzzle and going the distance. He's also the creator of the Beat Aging Transformation, a nod to his life as a drummer and commitment to march to a healthy beat. And so now let's meet Al Lyman. Hey, Al.
Hey, Susanna. So great to be with you this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad this worked out. I've been wanting to have a chat with you, and it's kind of turning out to be, I get to have first chats with people in public.
It's awesome. I mean, listen, we're here to be transparent, to be authentic, to let our inner true self shine through. I've certainly, trust me, in my long journey to reach this point, I've been seen, standing in the middle of a crowd without any clothes on more than once. So all good.
I'm not sure about that visual right now, but
well, there you go. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at it, right? Sorry, metaphorical. Let's put it that way.
There we go. But one of the things I want to do as we kind of get started here is to let you really talk a bit more about that journey of yours from making that decision that you're going to live and die healthy and the different things that happen, because it's been an amazing journey. And I deliberately skipped some of the things in the bio because I know they're just going to come up as we talk.
It has certainly been it's been a journey, and it's been humbling. And I'm learning every single day, and I have for a really long time. And I think when I go back to my early 20s, when I was thinking about my childhood, I wasn't athletic. I didn't do sports. I was typically always the last kid to get picked on the playground for kickball. And I knew I wasn't athletic. I knew I didn't, really fit in that way. And I always remember as a senior in high school, my gym teacher threatening me with failing me in gym class, which I needed to pass to graduate, if I didn't complete the mile run. So to say I was, not athletic is an understatement. And then I think as the years went on, I started to think about becoming a little bit more fit, and I started a running program. This was after I got my first gig. And, running was hard, and I just kept at it. I believed it was good for me. I think as I started to get into the running lifestyle, I started to notice more people around me and started to see those that I think were less fit. And, specifically my parents, who both smoked at the time and who were both, I would say, overweight. And of course, you know how it goes. You get started on a fitness program and you're all, full of yourself, and you're like, you should do this and you should do that. And, they was like, get away, But I think as time went on, I really started to notice those folks that I thought were aging more rapidly, that, folks that spent more time sick, taking prescription medications. And for whatever reason, I really wanted a different path for myself. So as I started to get into the running lifestyle, I started to branch off and try to learn more about overall health. And I remember sometime in the late, I guess it's mid to late 1980s, buying my first book on longevity by a pair of authors, Dirk and Sandy Pearson. One of their earliest books written on, how we might be able to extend our lifespan and live longer. And this just put a seed in my brain to start to learn a little bit more. And of course, what happened was this parallel journey where I was trying to lift my fitness and become a faster runner, and at the same time trying to do it in a way that would honor my health, which for anybody who's, watched certain aspects of the fitness industry appears as a bit of a dichotomy, because, when you're talking about running marathons, which I did a lot of during the 1980s and 1990s, or the Ironman triathlon, which I did, starting I did my first Ironman in 2000, or excuse me, in 1998, but my first Hawaii in 2000. I mean, those things in and of themselves, you could argue, how healthy are they really for you, right? I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword. So, but I always had this thing in the back of my mind of training for the betterment of my body, not to its detriment, to honor my health first. And I think from that, Susanna, what grew out of that was this very deep and profound realization that without good health, nothing else matters nearly as much. And of course, I watched people, including myself, pursue personal goals and try to achieve in whatever vocation or avocation they wanted to pursue. And sometimes they knew that, a pursuit of a goal meant that they were going to sacrifice in some way. And then, of course, there's the academic goals and the business-oriented goals, a career. We all have this vision of what a perfect life is, right? That we go to school, go to college, meet somebody, maybe start a family, start a career, and then climb the quote unquote, corporate ladder, if you will. And the whole time, I think so many folks are on this journey, it only takes one diagnosis, one event, one thing to happen that can shock us back into reality. And all of a sudden, nothing else matters nearly as much. And this was something, for whatever reason, Susanna, I was very aware of early on. So I had this vision, and this vision I had was to live my entire life in good health, free of disease and dysfunction. And then one night, like at the age of 110, go to sleep and not wake up the next day after doing something fun that day. And of course, what I saw was this squared curve, which even back in those days, and it's become worse, much worse, but even back in those days, I juxtaposed that against what I saw was a slow, gradual decline of health. I mean, in my book, and it's hard to hear, I say many people, unfortunately, die slow deaths before their actual demise. Sometimes it's cognitive, sometimes it's emotional, because of loneliness or isolation. The cognitive could obviously be from one of many dementia-oriented illnesses, and sometimes it's functional, right? Just losing our ability to move freely. And all of these things, in a way, can cause us to die before our actual demise. And I wanted something different and better for myself. And unfortunately, my dad, and I have many pictures of him in my book. I dedicate the book to him. He's one of the greatest persons I've ever known, but unfortunately aged so rapidly. And at the age of 64, the age I'm going to be in about 10 days, was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, which is a very pernicious, insidious form of brain cancer, and was gone in about 10 months. And that was just really, really tough to watch. And I know everybody listening here right now knows somebody who's passed from cancer. And I just, I wanted something different for myself. So I made it my mission to learn as much as I possibly could about how to create our best health. And, Susanna, we know, you and I know, a lot of it is a mystery, right? We don't know why some people get sick and other people don't, but there's so much more that we do know today. Certainly when I think about my parents' generation. So I think it's really about creating our best odds. What can we do to at least put the odds in our favor? Because the science now says unequivocally that about 80% of our health outcomes, broadly speaking, are from lifestyle. And only about 20% is from our genetics. And we've got a field of research now that centers around a term called epigenetics, which basically, epi meaning to sit on top of. So we've got these compounds which sit on top of genes or DNA that largely impact how the DNA or genes are expressed from our either internal or external environments. So we're learning a lot every day, but we I think have much more to learn. Of that, there is no doubt. But I say, let's put the odds in our favor to extend our health span. Because again, who wants to become a burden to those that they love? As soon as you're sick, as soon as you're diagnosed with some kind of an illness, as soon as you're convalescing, now everybody in your family, their lives change. And I'm experiencing this right now with my mom. But, you know, we don't want to become a burden to the people that we love. But sometimes it happens and it's out of our control. And there are so many downstream emotional events which can happen. We don't want life to end this way. And you know, listen, to die healthy, I mean, is that a pipe dream? It probably is. But I absolutely believe that we can compress, right, the period of time with the onset of disease, right? So we can push it off further into the future and reduce the any period of suffering and any stress to any of our family. And I think, to me, that would be the best way to see our lives all flow out. So that's kind of how it's all transpired for me. You know, the Ironman journey is a separate one, and it reflects, you know, some trauma as a child, and how I ended up getting there. But, you know, through it all, you know, the backdrop has been, how could I square that curve?
Yeah, well, the concept of a squared off curve takes a little bit of wrapping one's head around as well, because we're so used to those bell curves and everything is a curve and it flows, and you're not talking about a flow, really. You're talking about a steady and then a cliff, essentially.
Yes.
And
we're used to illness now. Actually, it's crazy that I think
it is.
We have become so, you know, I don't know. I don't even know what the word is, but certainly I think for most people in my age bracket, right, in people in their mid 60s, they just assume that it's normal to be on 4 or 5 prescription medications, that their back hurts and that their hips hurt and that their feet hurt, and that they simply are limited in terms of what they're able to do. And they think it's normal, right? I know, I mean, right in my neighborhood here, I know 2 different people in their 40s who had joint replacements, one to their knee and one to their hip. And they don't think that's unusual or necessarily abnormal. So I think we've become, you know, deluded into thinking that, you know, ill health is what we should expect. And nothing could be further from the truth. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I can think about what I'm taking for prescriptions at this point, and one of them is due to genetics, because I'm on rat poison because I've had a blood clot and I have that genetic susceptibility to it. So it's like that I get my tests every month, but it just seems like everybody is used to medications, and you look at the people in the line to get their medications at the pharmacy, and
crazy.
It's like everybody, and you don't know what they're taking, but then you see people walk out with a bag that just feels like it's filled with prescriptions, and you wonder how can you take that much stuff a day?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's downstream side effects to all of those medications. And what's sad is that the companies that produce, if we're talking about nutrition, produce the foods that are making us sick are also the companies that are producing the medications that are designed to treat the symptoms from the sickness from the foods that they created. And it's a vicious circle. And I hate to say it, but, you know, you follow the money. There's a lot of profit in fast food, in processed food, in industrialized food. Right. And there's a tremendous amount of profit in pharmaceuticals, right? And we know that, you know, we're inundated with advertising that tells us that we need to take a pill, or if we have a problem, we should take a pill. And, you know, the end result of that is, you know, they can add up quickly. So again, at the end of the day, Is it better to take the short-term quick fix, or is it better to go, you know what? I'm worth it. My health is worth it. My loved ones are worth it. Why don't I try to make a tiny little change to say it today and see if I can turn the ship around?
So what brought about the book and writing the book? I mean, was it just a natural flow, or did you kind of hit a point where you were tired of whatever was going on? It's like,
Yeah.
it's time to write.
Well, you're a writer and I'm a writer, and I've written for many years. And I've had many people say to me, Al, you should write a book. You should write a book about this. You should write a book about that. I remember visiting a client of mine once, because I've coached triathletes and runners for about 25 years. And I remember visiting a client, a coached athlete of mine once, and knocking on his front door, and his wife answers the door, and she comes up and she says, "Hey, Hal, so nice to meet you. Scott's in the back, so come on in." And we were talking for a moment. She said, "Do you know that he's kept every single thing you've ever written and printed it out, and it's in a notebook?" I'm like, "What? No, I didn't know that." And sure enough, she goes and she gets a notebook about this thick. So I've always loved to write, but I think what happened was, and interestingly, COVID, I think, paralleled this to some degree. But in all these years of coaching, I've worked, as I mentioned, with triathletes and runners predominantly. And I felt a calling to move away from that specific group of people and work more with the average person. And I think that paralleled what I've seen is an increasing amount of illness and dysfunction in our society. It's sad to say, but with all of the other problems that we have as a society, and we've got a boatload, right? From school shootings to politics, it's disheartening at times. But one thing that I saw as someone who's really hyper focused on our health was just seeing the declining health of the average person, and the increasing rate of disease, and the increasing costs of healthcare, and seeing people just hamstrung to try to figure out how to pay for healthcare, and at the same time desperately needing some kind of healthcare, what I think of now as sick care. And so I was called to move into that direction, and I wanted to do speaking. I really wanted to get in front of groups of people, inspire people, share with them what I'd learned over a lifetime. And then I thought, a book is a book's probably the best business card I could ever have for speaking. But
Mhm.
more than that, there was no other way for me to share what I could share with other people than a book, So I said, you know what, I'm going to write some of what I can share, some of what my experience has taught me. I'm going to bring in expertise from others that I've read about. And that was really the decision that, I said, you know what, if I have a book, I've got something to share with other people if they want to learn more. If I have a book, if I decide to speak more, certainly a book becomes that linchpin to be able to create more opportunities. So I sat down one day and created a mind map, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with, and sort of a theoretical title to the book, and just started writing down all kinds of things that I wanted to include. And, my thought process at the time was I wasn't going to do a deep dive on any particular topic, but I wanted to include everything that I thought really impacted our health, because I think it's very common now for people to go down one path and say, well, I'm doing this, so I'm going to be healthy, I'll be okay, or my parents are this, or, but I knew absolutely that so many factors contributed to our health, from our age beliefs to our mindset, to our sleep and stress and exercise and movement and the food we eat, and all kinds of other factors, including, the dangers of modern life, the environment that we live in every day, or that we're exposed to, from artificial lights to plastics to dental health, I mean, we can go down a very long list. So I started writing, and about 3 months later, I had a rough draft that was about 225,000 words. And yeah, and you're laughing because you, as an author, you know that amounts to a pretty large book. Now, at the time, I had no idea. I didn't really know. It wasn't until, I got it off for formatting after doing some editing, that I thought, oh my goodness, I've got a 650 to 680 page book here. Of course, I had a lot of people say, that's the worst thing you could do for your first book. Never write something that large. You should always start with something small, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, listen, I wrote the book I needed to write. That was the bottom line. I mean, this is the book I needed to write. This is what I wanted to share. It is what it is. And I'm really proud of it. It's received incredible, I've gotten some incredible feedback from it. Some amazing and very humbling reviews on Amazon. And so, yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, well, in that writing process is always to think that you drop that many words in yours. For me, when I wrote Armor of God, I originally wrote the whole story, and it was about 130,000 words when I was done. It took me about 3 years, but I was working around other things, and I'm a pantser writer. So I just let it come to me as it comes. The story will tell me what it is, and then it will hit the page.
Yeah.
But in this case, when I saw how big it was, I realized I kind of had to cut it in half. And I had a natural halfway point, but that means I had to build a new back for one book, a new beginning for another. So that 130,000 words turned in more like 160 by the time I was done.
Yeah.
But the writing process itself, I mean, it sounds like you kind of had yours outlined. You talk about mapping it out. You knew what you wanted, and that is the most important thing that you said. You've got to write what you want to write, because the minute you start writing what you think people want to read and hear, and I know there's people that this is what they suggest, it doesn't come from the heart. And if it doesn't come from the heart, it doesn't have the same impact that it will have when it comes from the heart. And
yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And, I knew that the book, I mean, when I started on it, I knew a couple of things. I knew, number one, it had to be written really well, because I know for me, if I open up a book and I find typos or I find some really bad grammar within the first 3 or 4 or 5 pages, I put it down and I don't go back to it. I have no tolerance for something that isn't written well. So I knew that was an absolute necessity. And the second thing was, I had the benefit of having written for a lot of years and having a writing style. And I think I'd never really thought about it before, but the feedback I've received has been, that people love. It's very conversational. I'm very vulnerable, very transparent. And I think that's been really gratifying to hear. But at the time, I was just writing the way that I write,
right.
Very honestly and very openly. And as it turns out, it's a real strength of the book, and I'm grateful for that, because nobody wants to read a book that reads like a textbook, especially when it's about topics related to our health, So yeah, I've had many people say, I picked it up and I can't put it down, and that's really gratifying. So yeah, I knew what I wanted to say. I mean, all of the books that I referenced, and gosh, I referenced, probably 50 different books. I had read them all, and they were all sort of front of mind for me. And so I knew where I wanted to go for those references, and I had a clear idea. I've been thinking about this for my whole life, Susanna, every day.
Well, yeah, and that's the point where you've got to do it when you've got so much thought there. I do want to kind of go back to the Ironman, though. and how you actually got involved with that. Because when I think of, well, number one, I could never do it because swimming is out. I'm a freaking rock. And maybe that's why I was in the Army instead of the Navy. Like, I never passed a swimming test. But being able to do that, the running itself, just running that marathon itself, that's a lot to it.
Yep.
And then adding the bike and, to me, the dreaded, what is it, 2-mile swim?
2.4, yeah.
2.4.
Yeah.
Like, you're going from nothing and you decide you're going to do this. How does that happen?
Well, there's a multitude of factors, and I'll share these with you. Now, keep in mind that before I decided to do the Ironman, I'd really progressed my running. And I'd become an accomplished runner. I've got a 2:39 Boston Marathon PR, which is, pretty fast for a guy with very little talent. I'd done, maybe a dozen Boston Marathons by that point. But there's two events that have really defined my life, Susanna. And I love talking about these because I really do think that we all have a story, right? We all have experiences in our past that shape how we see the world and how we experience the world. And for me, there were two defining events, and they both happened at around the same time when I was 10 years old. The first was that I was bullied pretty significantly during one particular year in grade school. And I lived about a mile from school, and so I would walk home, and my parents neither were home, both were working. But there was a period of time where I would hide literally for an hour or more after school let out until everybody was gone. And I'd end up still getting roughed up in the woods on my way back home from some local neighborhood kids. And that experience really shaped me, in that I felt, like a coward, and I felt weak, and I was embarrassed and humiliated. And I tell a story about that in the book, where about 10 years ago, one of the kids that was bullying me actually came up to me at a funeral for a neighborhood friend. And with tears streaming down his eyes, he apologized for what had happened. Two grown men talking about something that happened when we were 10 years old. Amazing. Now, the other thing that happened at that time was I had a near fatal drowning, where I had to be pulled out of the water. And I remember very little from that event, except that I wanted nothing to do with the water. But what followed was that my folks, especially my mom, wanted to get me back into the water. So she signed me up for a swim program at the local lake with the rec department in town. And she had to force me to go. I wanted no part of it. And when I was there, I didn't participate. I just pouted on the sideline. Finally, the instructors, who were a bunch of teenagers, dragged me into the water to try to teach me. I remember them saying to me, "We're going to teach you the elementary backstroke." It's the words that stick out in my head. And I was crying. And I have a vivid memory of watching the bus pull away with all the kids on it, because my mom had dropped us off at the school. All the kids gathered there, climbed onto a bus to go to the lake. And I just remember all the kids looking at me and pointing at me while, these instructors were working with me. Very traumatic event for a 10-year-old. So from that point until I was 36 years old, I never went near the water, anywhere near, like any deeper than knee deep. But as my running had progressed, and I was starting to obviously really into this fitness lifestyle, I would always watch the Ironman on TV, and I always admired these triathletes for what I thought was, perfect, balanced fitness, swimming, cycling, running. I mean, what's better than that, right? And of course, I knew I would never be able to do the Ironman, right? Because I was deathly afraid of the water. So in 1995, I'm sitting on a couch with my daughter, my then 9-year-old daughter, Erin, and we're watching the Hawaii Ironman on TV, because the race is in October. It's always broadcast around December, early December, and it was a fantastic race, very exciting, and you know what? I just stood up and blurted out, "I'm going to do the Ironman. I'm going to do the Ironman," and Erin laughed. And chuckled in a very innocent way that a 9-year-old would when she knew that her dad really didn't know he'd go anywhere near the water. Certainly wasn't a swimmer. She didn't know why. It wasn't a story that I ever told. So that began a journey for me to not only learn how to become a swimmer as an adult, which is very hard to do, but to also overcome PTSD, right? To overcome my fear of the water, and actually get into it. And all I'll say is that 2 years after that proclamation, or about 2.5 years, I did my first Ironman distance triathlon. And 2 years after that, I did another Ironman. Actually, it was in 2000. I did 3 Ironman races that year, but in one of those qualified for the Ironman World Championships in Hawaii. So October of 2000 was my first Hawaii Ironman, and I've done that race 3 times, 9 total. So, and now for almost 14 years, I've coached a woman who is a 5-time Ironman age group world champion, literally the best in the world in her age group. So what happened in the course of all of those, everything that happened during that period of time was, of course, I became a different person. And somehow, some way, I figured out how to keep going. And these are the things I have to remind myself about today in business, because it's all about not giving up, right? It's all about continuing to persist when it seems like every voice and sign in the universe is telling you to quit. Because I had so many moments when, I was crying with my kids, and I would go to the pool and I would stand on the side of the pool deck, and then I would just leave and go home. And I'd do it the same thing the next day. And I took all these swim classes and workshops and clinics, and I don't think anybody understood what I was going through. Nobody had really a clue, And so people ask me, like, how did you do that? And I go, it's just like you have to stare your fear straight into the eyeballs and have the courage to just inch yourself a little further and just keep doing that and keep doing that. And it's been a remarkable journey, but I'll just finish by saying this. Having gone through that, it empowered me to at least believe that maybe this is God's purpose for me on this earth, to help other people see that there's more inside of them that they're capable of, if they can just be made to see just a sliver of it, Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you and I are similar, because I think that's certainly the work that you're doing right now, helping others to see what they're capable of.
Well, it's
beyond the boxes.
Beyond the boxes. It's that overcoming fear. Because one of the things that I will say is, when you own your fear no longer owns you. And that's what you're just talking about right now. You're facing your fear all the time. And I would have just as much difficulty trying to swim at this point, because 2 years of swimming lessons, and I had difficulties even putting my head under the water.
Yeah.
And
you're not the only one.
I had somebody trying to help me in ROTC to try and be ready for 75 meters. So 3 laps of the pool down in
Yep.
3 each way.
Back out again. Yep.
And I never got more than, I could go from the shallow end to the deep end. I could turn around and I could get back about a third of the way, and then my hand is on the wall and I'm done. And there was no way I'd go anywhere more than arm's reach from the wall.
Yeah. Well,
It's
I did it, so you're capable of it. You're absolutely capable of it. I think you need a different teacher.
well, let's put it this way. I had it, at least who was helping me in college. I got a whole lot farther than I did
Yeah,
in what, second and third grade.
right.
And the day that I thought I was going to put my head underwater was the day after a neighbor's dog had essentially bit me in the face and I had stitches, and so I couldn't go in the water. And that
Mm,
was the end of my swimming career.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's these finding these ways to move beyond the boxes, which you definitely did it with the Ironman. And the book that you have, and now even as you talk about working with, as you talked about working with triathletes and athletes for so long, and then you mentioned your shift. What's it been like, and how do you approach your clients after you made that shift and now who you're working with the older population, as it were?
Well, Susanna, in many ways, I thought it would be dramatically different in some respects, but I think it's very much the same. Great coaching to me is one, I mean, it's defined by the coach's ability to read between the lines and understand what a person needs at any moment in time, and having the wherewithal to be empathetic and understanding and supportive and encouraging. And of course, early on in any coach's career, you're thinking about all the technical aspects of the things that you need to master. Certainly as a sport coach, the movements, the exercises, maximal aerobic capacity, lactate threshold, what should be the duration of this type of workout, blah, 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 blah. But what you come to realize is it's about the people, and it's about understanding their why. What are they doing what they're doing for, right? And then really understanding what it is that they need at any moment in time. And of course, most of us need more encouragement, Susanna, right? Most of us need to know that there are one or more people in our corner that want the best for us. It's often said that nobody will care what you know until they know that you care. And I think that's cliche, but I think it's very true. So in a way, if I look at, for example, coaching a 64-year-old man who might be 100 pounds overweight, and he really is concerned about what retirement's going to be like and whether or not he's going to be able to enjoy his kids and grandkids once he retires from his, government job or whatever it may be. Versus, coaching a 40-year-old, triathlete whose goal is to qualify for Ironman Hawaii. And at the end of the day, I think, relating to them on a very individual basis, understanding how, as much as you can, how they're wired, and what their why is and what their ultimate goals are and how they think, is the key to being able to help them at whatever stage they're at. And the goal, whatever the goal may be, is the goal. And I always say, it's about what happens to us. It's cliche to say the journey is the destination, right, Susanna? But it's true, right? It's true in that how we evolve, how we change, how we grow, how we learn to deal with our, negative inner critic, how we learn to accept ourselves for who we are, how we learn how to balance this delicate balance of self-acceptance and self-improvement and find, the happy medium between these two. This is what I love most about coaching, is that At the end of the day, whether someone actually achieves a theoretical goal that they've set for themselves, I know that they've grown individually, and that they've come to love themselves more and accept themselves more. Yet at the same time, understand that, that the best way to live our life is to say, how can I be a little bit better today than I was yesterday? How can I be a little bit better version of myself tomorrow than I am today? And realizing that the stories that we're telling ourselves about ourselves is largely what dictates these things, right? So
Oh, yeah.
telling better stories about ourselves to ourselves, more accepting, more loving, more compassionate, more empathetic, and therefore allowing us, freeing us to really experience joy in the moment, whatever that moment may be.
Well, and as you talk about that, another thought that kind of goes through my mind, like when I talk about vision boards, is manifesting. Because you're sitting there talking about what you're saying to yourself, the words going through your head. This is what gets people to start making changes. It's just another form of manifesting to make happen, to get it to happen the way that you want it to, or sometimes even better, by having that daily conversation with yourself to say, this is it. And especially if those conversations are realistic with yourself. You don't just say, this is what I want. You start feeling what you want. You feel what it's like to move easier, to be able to step on a scale and see a number that you want, and you feel that. And I know there's a lot of truth to it as well, because in the Army, one of the things you had to do was push-ups. And I would remember basically doing that same process, visualizing, feeling. My arms may not move, but to feel each push-up in the proper speed. And that's basically what helped to get past some of those PT tests towards the end of my career.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm such a big believer in visualization, exactly as you've described. I talk about it in the book. I certainly think if I had $1 for every time I've said to someone or suggested to someone, see this in your mind's eye, and feel it. And I knew that I've always known that mindset. We talk about the word mindset a lot, but the idea that if we can truly visualize, in a tactile sense, and see what it is we hope to manifest, that the odds of achieving it are much greater. I knew that, intuitively, in the work that I did as a coach, helping people to move better, to see themselves moving better, to see in their mind's eye the way that they wanted to move. And I remember, because we haven't talked about it much, I've spent my life really earning my living as a musician. I'm a percussionist. And so I've memorized a lot of music in my life and performed at very high levels at really big gigs. And I can't even tell you the amount of times that I've practiced in my mind's eye, not actually having myself sitting in front of my instrument, but literally seeing the music in my mind's eye,
Yep.
and rehearsing that, even without the instrument there. It's powerful.
Yeah, I never got, well, in high school, you don't quite visualize, you just hope
Yeah.
it works. And for me, I completely understand that with the music. I had two brothers that I just basically called them dumb drummers. They were my younger brothers. They were that's what they did. The middle one went for drums. The younger one was like 10 years younger, and pretty much whatever middle brother did, that's what he did.
Yep.
Me, I tried to play the trumpet and ended up going to the trombone. So that's what I had through high school. So when I talk about marching, that's what I had.
Right.
marching with that trombone, and in high school, the ability my senior year to have the bass trombone. It's like that was the ultimate toy.
Oh boy. I'm trying to imagine you with a bass trombone. I can't, but hey,
Well, I am on the taller side, so it's the gal who had it before me, she was on the shorter side, and it was, but
great.
yeah, it was fun. And then at the same time, like one of the songs that we were playing my senior year, I think, was Little Brown Jug. And so I'm playing it on the bass bone, the trombone solo.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
But yeah, so are you still doing the music then as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I got to tell you, it's something I'm very, very grateful for, because for so many years it was my vocation, and now it's something that I think of as a hobby. But I live here on the Gulf Coast of Florida, just south of Sarasota, in a little town called Nokomis, and we're just outside of Venice, which is a burgeoning community, a quite large city. And so I'm doing a few gigs here and there, but I'm also a percussionist, a member of the Venice Symphony Orchestra here, and it's an incredible group, really. The music director Troy Quinn lives in Los Angeles and teaches at USC conducting, and comes out to lead. We do I'd say about 100 services a year. In fact, our season starts next week, and we'll go right to the end of May. And is tremendous community support for the orchestra. So we'll do 3 concerts next weekend to sold out auditoriums, which is absolutely amazing. In fact, as I sit here right now, 90% of the entire season is sold out. So there's tremendous amount of community support. And you're going to laugh at this, Susanna, but I'm also the orchestra's librarian. Shoot me now. It's a tremendous, really big job. But a few years ago, when I was asked if I might consider doing it, I said yes, just because I thought it would be really cool to contribute to this organization. And so I've got some helpers, but I'll tell you, preparing music for all of these different series for about 85 musicians, including all the string bowings and all of that. I mean, it's crazy. It's a huge job, but very gratifying.
Yeah, and I can imagine that just dealing with all that music. I mean, I don't even know how band directors did
I know.
Did it in the first place, and to pass it out, and the different types of bands. So in your case, you've also got an eclectic style of music that you've been playing, it sounds like.
Yep.
Because if you've got the orchestra now, and with that, having had that as your main thing, there's just so much diversity within the music arena itself that I can only imagine what it must be like bouncing from this to that.
Yeah.
I only get a little bit of it in high school when it was like the big band plays this stuff, but the pep band plays this stuff, and the stage band plays that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not the same.
Yeah, it's I would say, it is so much work, but it is really, I mean, to me, one of the most enjoyable things in my entire life is to be on stage with a very, very good professional musical organization. It's a part-time orchestra, but it's but all professionals, and the music is tremendous, and the quality of the music is tremendous. And that is an incredibly gratifying feeling, just to be part of that team and just bring, an audience to their feet is super exciting. And it, it's something that I hope I'll always be able to do until one day, like when I decide, okay, I guess I've played enough, maybe at 110, I don't know.
You never know.
You never know.
But do you want to try and answer this question then?
Michelina, what don't I do? I don't know. Michelina knows that I have some other hobbies as well too, including carpentry and drawing and painting. I've done a little bit. I'm sort of your quintessential, jack of all trades, but master of absolutely nothing. Michelina is, by the way, I mean, I have to throw out a little kudos to her. She's my partner in a company called Juice Plus. And I love to talk about Juice Plus whenever I have the opportunity. This is a company that's been around for more than 30 years that makes plant and fruit capsules and a
Right.
number of other products to support healthy eating and good health. I happen to be a big believer in the idea of trying to consume real food as much as possible rather than trying to chase supplements to get all the nutrients that we need. And Juice Plus is amazing because it's actual real food that's been produced from fruit and vegetable farms that have been harvested at their peak ripeness and processed into these plant and fruit powders. You pop the capsule and you've filled all those little nutritional gaps that you may have had, because the reality is, Susanna, we don't all eat as many fruits and plants as we should.
Well,
Michelina's been amazing as a mentor for me and also a partner, just sharing our love of good health and healthy eating and trying to help as many people as we can.
Well, when you talk about that, and I mentioned the fact that I say rat poison because it just has a nice connotation to it versus warfarin.
I was going to ask you what that rat poison was, but I didn't. I don't know if I wanted to go there. But there you go.
No. It's warfarin. So
Yeah.
Because I know it was used as rat poison at some point, and for me, I have to be careful about that intake of vitamin K. So it's like, on the one hand, I look at it as a godsend. I don't have to eat those green things I didn't like. However, then I just have to find something to replace it. But then I want to go back to one more thing before we kind of get to the end of this, because you talk about being a jack of all trades. And I've posted this before because everybody's used to a jack of all trades is a master of none. But many don't know the second half of it, which is, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And this is something I kind of got in lots of trouble with lots of people, because they're like, jack of all trades, you have to specify, you have to be. And it's like,
Right.
I can't get into those boxes. I can't do that. And knowing a little bit of everything sometimes makes us much more rounded than to only be one thing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I think it's a challenge that every young parent faces today when thinking about early specialization for their children. And of course, we all have this idea in the back of our mind that if we want to be the greatest at any particular topic or, vocation or activity, that we need to be hyper focused on that. But I'll simply say that for me, exploring all of these different areas allows me to express myself. I love the way Claudia, another member of our Hounds of Business community, talks about how, drawing and art is her way to express herself. And I can so connect with, what she says. And I think we all have these different ways to find, the most authentic part of ourselves and really express who we are and make our little contribution to the world. So I wouldn't have it any other way, Susanna, just like you.
well, exactly. And the other beautiful thing is, you bring up Claudia. She's on next week.
So there you go. Beautiful.
So I got Claudia next week, and then Ollie is the day before Thanksgiving. So it's gonna be
Batten down the hatches.
Yeah, batten down the hatches. So as we kind of wrap things up, because we've hit that hour mark.
Yep.
If you have any last minute tidbits, golden nuggets, whatever that you want to drop, this is the time to just be the one to close us out with those last words.
Well, Susanna, I would simply say, everyone at the end of the day has to wake up and realize that, there's no such thing as a life without some kind of hard. We're faced with lots of challenges, right? We're all working too many hours. There's a lot of stress in our lives. We've talked a little bit, about the politics and blah, blah, blah. I think at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a life without some kind of hard. We have to choose our hard. And to me, if I have to choose my hard, I would rather choose the hard that says I'm going to make one tiny little change today in my lifestyle that will help me to move closer to optimal health, the best version of myself. If I'm going to choose some kind of hard today, it would be I'm going to try to get 5 minutes of exercise if I didn't do that yesterday. Because without good health, nothing else matters very much. And that is, at the end of it, what I think we all need to remember. And by the way, Michelina, I can just see her comment there, talking about warfarin. I think you may want to check out Juice Plus. This may be the perfect thing that you need to find that middle ground for sure. So, listen, Susanna, thank you so much for having me on. I love chatting with you. I love sharing a little of my story. I hope it's been inspiring. I'm here to help in any way that I can. Folks can find me at theallyman.com, of course, on LinkedIn. And most other social profiles. Reach out. I'd love to continue our conversation. And thank you so much.
Oh, it's been great having you here. And what I really love is we hit some stuff that I haven't heard you talk about in other places as well. So going into the music, going into a little bit deeper into the swimming, which has its own question mark. When I say that, it's like deep end of the pool. But anyway,
that's for sure. Yes.
I stay away from that part of the pool. But it's been great, and I'm so glad that you were here. And it's just been a great conversation, a great time, and so much from it. And it's just I gotta stop saying great because I can just keep saying great.
Thank you.
Need new words. So from that, I'm going to wrap this up and say thanks everybody for being here. It was great having everybody in the comments, everybody who watched. This lives on YouTube now, so people can come back and go, wait a minute, what did Al say? And go and find it and hear it from the horse's mouth again.
There you go.
It's great. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, and I will see you next week.